Hello and welcome, I'm Tafarag Adamo. There seems to be a steady stream of writers who are into self-publishing in this country. But is that a healthy trend? What do publishers need to do, and how? My guest today, Roman Tewolde, an author, is also a publisher who has been in the business for the last 2 years. A very warm welcome to the program, Roman.
Thank you.
You have authored 2 books, right?
Correct, yes.
The first one is a collection of poems, right?
Yes, in English, reflections, poems, and also I included some photographs in it too. Just a combination of the 2 arts. It was almost 10 years ago now, my first small book of poetry collection. I was living in London at that time when I published my first book. And then I moved back to Ethiopia to live here permanently, and I learned to write in Amharic. I taught myself to write in Amharic, and I wrote a teenager's fairy tale in Amharic.
How well received were they?
The first one was very well received. The poetry book was very well received, and I sold out immediately to... but the second book, marketing the second book was quite a challenge.
Why? Because you targeted the young, right?
I targeted the young, and apparently...
You should have sold fast and
So you'd have thought, yes. It made good logic at the time. That was my thinking behind it. Not purposely to sell the book, but having my audience in mind, the teenagers. I did see a gap in that there are a lot of reading materials for beginners, and for adults. But I somehow sensed there was a gap for teenagers, especially in Amharic literature.
And that's what you wanted to do.
Exactly.
So what was the readership like?
Oh, it was, I didn't...
back to that question again. Why was it that wasn't received?
Printing quality wasn't superb, I will admit, but I didn't know that the distribution was a problem. The distribution, handling how to distribute the books, apparently... Even at that age, I think it's the parents that buy books for their kids. And I didn't know how to market it, really. And I still had a few copies, lots of copies at home, under the bed, in the ceiling and everywhere.
Weren't they reviewed? Wasn't it reviewed by the papers? Do we have...
No, it wasn't reviewed.
So how well, there is no way people would know about your book then.
True. Exactly.
So what was the mechanism that you used to make that available in terms of, that you should be aware that you are there?
Yeah, just the book vendors in Addis are quite mixed up, as you well know. There's no streamlined or, bookshop that sells books by genre, even like fiction, biography, history. There's a lot of genres of books. They're all bulked up all together. So who would identify a kid's books from an adult book, let alone a teenager fantasy? So it was a very difficult challenge to market it for me, to make it known to people, as you say. Obviously, I'm catching up. We started using Facebook. Facebook is quite a good medium these days for advertising books, but we don't have such media that reviews books independently. There are a few papers in Amharic. Addis Admas used to be quite good in
book reviews and so.
Book reviews and informing people about new releases of books as well too, but
it's barely enough. You wrote these 2 books. You published these 2 books, basically self-published them. And then you got into the intricacies of distribution, the challenges that writers face, and you ended up what you're doing now, which is basically publishing. Is that how you came to be here?
It's true. That is true. The failure, my failure in marketing my second book in Amharic, the Danaden, gave me a lot of lessons to to help me do what I'm doing at the moment. I am publishing books and handling distribution of books of authors because it needs marketing, it needs management.
And that whole bureaucracy, basically. So let's talk about the publishing part of the story. How did you get your first book published? I mean, as a publisher?
As a publisher. I was approached by my friend who wrote this book in Amharic jurisprudence. It's actually an academic book, but very well written in Amharic. He asked me to review his book. I read it. I loved it. And so we just discussed about it. We ventured together to look for a publisher for him. We knocked on every door. Then I said, why don't I publish it for you? And I started my publishing business.
First-time publisher?
Yes.
And then picking up a book on jurisprudence?
Yes, true.
And you basically were taking the risk. Could have been a total failure in terms of.
It went very well.
Really?
Yes.
What does very well mean?
I mean, I sold out. It sold out. I published the number of books that are published is quite staggering. I mean, it's minute compared to the population of Addis, of Ethiopia. It's in thousands. We're talking about 5,000, 3,000, 2,000 books, and even 1,000 book is a lot of books to manage when it comes to numbers. When we talk about the number of books, because our reading culture is also quite poor. The marketing, as I say, is quite mixed up, and that book on jurisprudence led on to other ventures too. So I started publishing other books. I've published a collection of poetry too. I collected 10 young poets, and instead of one poetry book, different works of the 10 young poets, and also 13 young writers. Some girls in there too, which I'm quite proud of. There are about 5-6 girls in there that write very well. It's a collection of short stories, Guramaili and Yenefs Wota, these two, jurisprudence, and another. I focus on fiction mostly, as you can tell.
And obviously. So you are into your 5th title now.
Yes.
Are you encouraged by how it has come along in the last 2 years? I assume that you were in the business the last 2 years only.
Yes, I am. I am encouraged, but also quite disheartened. Hence, just recently, I've also started a small shop to also sell my books, because just the distribution and handling is not enough to turn back your investment, so that you can, to enable me to invest in other books as well.
In terms of publishing, I mean, the reason why I've asked that question is primarily because in order to get books published, you need to have a very solid team working with you or for you, however you want to approach it. You need to have editors, because in some cases you're talking about specialized, like your first book, the first book that you published on jurisprudence, you need specialized knowledge. Do you have editors aboard in your team who will be looking into this, or you just rely on friends who have that sort of specialized?
I do rely on friends, and I'm very much a one-woman team, but I do have friends. I have a partner that has come on board on the publishing just recently. To help with such, we commission some works, some editing work. Editing is a big issue when it comes to books in Addis. I'm very much doubtful all the books are edited, what are published, because self-publishing is rife, as you well know, and
And how do you address the problem that you face in terms of what you just raised. I mean, editing. It's very, very important part of the whole story.
Process. It is. It is the biggest. I believe it's one of the not as big as the writing, but it's one of the biggest part of making a book is the editing, and making it into a book is a process. It just,
so you cannot just rely on friends to help you in this regard. So I'm just trying to look into how this is only.
I do rely on friends. Unfortunately, there is no systemized way. There's a lack of editors. There's a lack of critics, honest critics. A huge gap.
So let's talk about the distribution part. You just told me that you have a store, right? I mean, is that
small store? True.
So I would have thought that the way things are happening in terms of selling books would be the only way out in town, basically on this roadside vendors. I mean, the booksellers that we see, roaming, suffocating, basically. Suffocating is probably a little bit too extreme, but roaming around town.
Yes. My shop is also quite by the street, and I would somehow to systemize the street.
People don't come to buy books from your store.
No, they don't.
People basically rely on vendors that carry books, and
to change that system, I think we need to get into the system, and maybe I could become a street vendor, and just, that's probably how to approach it, because the street vendors don't know what they only look at the economical value of how much money they're going to get from selling one book. They don't know what are good books, what are not good books.
And they tell you stories per what they have heard.
Exactly, right? Exactly.
Quite often could be misleading.
Very much so.
That's how they navigate the
markets.
And that makes sense, does it not? I mean, they're basically leading...
the markets, they are. They are. Yes, the street vendors are leading the market. I completely agree with you. And how to go about that is the biggest challenge, I believe, because I'm not sure how many people are satisfied with their books they're buying, but I'm very dubious that everyone is satisfied with every book he buys, because to begin with, the editing. The second, forget the content. The editing itself is a huge challenge in our Amharic literature. And we do have high-quality publishers in Ethiopia. It's not all rubbish, to be honest with you. Addis Ababa University Press, Ethiopian Science Academy Press, Shama Books. But these publishing houses, I believe, are... can I use this word? A bit elitist. They're not for the society. They're more academic. They're on biographical, historical stuff. They produce absolutely beautiful books. But we also need books for the public. And the public deserves to have good books. So... my thinking is to create a brand between the two, to mix the two.
Mass consumption.
Yes, for some good stuff for mass consumption.
Right.
Like Penguin books, but that's a dream.
Right. When we talk about mass consumption, are you talking about fiction or non-fiction?
Fiction.
Fiction.
My heart is with fiction, but... fiction, because non-fiction, as you say, fiction also needs specialist knowledge, and but it's not specific. Fiction is international, transcendental. I mean, even if we get some Ethiopian fiction work translated, I'm sure we can stand on the international stages, as Dina Mengistu has done it in English. But Amharic is a barrier, for sure. But we have very brilliant writers in Ethiopia, too.
translate, write in English and at the same time, but also translating,
the Amharic into English.
But that looks like a forbidden territory. Not many are, not forbidden to say, but not many are, having a try along that line.
True.
And right? But
You're
it's
right.
not to say that there are not.
I know one lady who's tried Bethlehem Matfield. She's translates some of Adam Retta's and Ismaka Warku's fiction, The Lost Spell. She found a publisher in the UK, and I think it's released now. We should follow her example. A lot of other Ethiopians could follow her example and make Ethiopian literature international as well.
Do you think the universities, higher institutions of learning need to take the lead in this respect? Do you think so?
Most definitely. Most definitely. Most definitely. Who else?
Because they have the financial muscle, A, and B, they have a pool to tap into.
They have a pool of students and academics that could be interested to do such good translation works from Amharic literature into English literature, for sure. But who else? I mean, this lady I mentioned to you is an individual. If it was institutionalized, as you say, it would have more impact.
Do you see some light at the end of the tunnel? Because it looks like it's going to take forever.
No, unfortunately.
Right.
Not in becoming, it's a long way. It's a long way for Amharic literature to become international. We have a very, very long way. We have even a longer way to clear our market and get our readership right. And the mass deserves good books. How do we get that is a very big...
It's interesting. The appetite is there, basically, right? I mean, in a way, but it has to come from you guys, publishers and
businesswomen, the booksellers too. The booksellers can impact this, I believe. If there was somehow they systemized it, they could choose good books for the masses. Yeah. But it's a long way.
It's a long way.
It is a long way.
And it's not cheap. Publishing is not you need to come into the business with tons of money.
True. You need
Did you follow that line of,
I wouldn't say tons, but yes, I've surely invested in my first book, and I've been reinvesting ever since, and diversifying into a shop. I think of other venues in the future. Digital marketing is a big area to look at for the future generation, because these days everybody's on their phone, especially in Addis. And the book won't die out. I don't believe the book will die out. The paper book will never die. But making availability and accessibility of books more systemized. And paper is very expensive in Ethiopia. Sure. Printing now is a luxury, to be honest with you. As you say, these days, especially in the past few months particularly, the prices have just quadrupled. Sure. And even newspapers are becoming unaffordable. So reading is going to become a luxury in the future. I don't know. It's very scary. Mm-hmm. The paper and printing cost at the moment is mind-numbing.
I know.
Yeah.
How about self-publishing? I mean, you started as a self-published author, right?
True.
Do you think that still is the way for first-time authors to get started?
There is no other way. I mean, unless,
with all its problems? Unless
we have enough publishers. I don't know. Only maybe I could count them in one hand, the publishers in Addis. There are no publishers as such. the bookshops sometimes act as publishers too, because they have the money. They'll publish it and then sell it there. It's all mixed up. So how else can a writer get his book out? It's very difficult unless we have institutionalized big publishers. I'm only an individual, but institutionalized big publishers that also publish individual works, fiction works, especially literature is quite a forgotten genre. It's not backward, but as I said, the history of Ethiopia, the biography, the academic stuff is well taken care. I wouldn't say it's taken care of by the academicians. Literature
is not. So do you think you need to have a very strong guild, if you will, of publishers?
Yes, that would be brilliant. To have a guild of publishers is a brilliant idea. Yeah.
What challenges do you foresee as you move along that course in the publishing business?
The price of paper, as I said, the price of printing, and the lack of print on demand is another big issue in Ethiopia, because the minimum number you print is 1,000, 2,000.
Not even a big figure.
No, it's not even a big figure, exactly. And then 1,000 book, the bigger number you publish, if you publish 10, 15,000 books, the cost per printing goes down. So the price of printing is my biggest worry at the moment. But going in the future, this guild, we're not, as a culture, I don't know, we rarely have collaborations. So if the book vendors collaborated, if publishers collaborated, and like if there was an overall umbrella to hold all these, I think we could make an impact.
So what are you saying basically is all mixed up. You have
very much so.
Printers who double as publishers.
True.
And basically they may not know what they're doing.
Yeah.
You have self-published. The business of self-publishing is really big in this country in the absence of, standard publishing houses. And publishers are only a few and far in between. And a few have died or specialized in specific areas, which are not necessarily into literature and so on. So buyers and sellers and publishers and printers, it's all a mixed up business. You need to clear that in the years ahead so that you can get things right. Does that make sense?
Exactly. On point. That's exactly what the biggest problem is, this mix. It's like a concoction. It's all mixed up. As you say, the seller is the publisher, the printer. Some printing houses are publishers too. Copyright laws are not respected.
That's sad, because we have a fairly long history in publishing, right?
True. We do. Since before
500 years, perhaps 600 years, and so on. Look at some of the manuscripts.
It is very sad, and in some ways, I'm not for censorship and all, but when my uncle...
You need to have some sense of order.
We need to have some sense of order, because it's all crazy. It's a flood, as you said. It's all mixed up. It's a flood, and the censorship. You can't buy freedom with anything, but we had better literature when Sabat was alive. I believe. I don't know. We do. We still have good literature now, but sifting it out and getting it known. How many years did it take for us to know Adam Retta? So many years. His first book was written like ages ago. How many years did it take us to know Alamayo Gelagay? All our big authors that are working on that write literature. So many years. But when Kuraz Publishing was active. We knew Nabah Alu and all the writers of that era. We got to know them then and there, and books were quite valuable things then. I remember reading from friends, like we're grabbing from each other and reading with passion, because now there's lots of books that passion is not there too.
Well, I hope these issues that you just raised will be addressed in the years ahead, and good luck in what you're doing. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.